Cursor recently announced their biggest release ever, Cursor 2.0, which comes with a whole new AI coding model from the Cursor team themselves called Composer, as well as a whole new interface for interacting with multiple AI agents to help you code. So today, we're going to take a look at all of the new Cursor features by building an iOS application from start to finish. So hit that subscribe button and let's first jump into Xcode to get our project set up. In Xcode, we're going to go to the iOS template tab and click on App for an iOS app, and then we're going to hit Next. We don't need to worry about anything else. And then we're going to type in our product name. So with this, we are going for an app called Finish My, which is a game where you complete sentences against an AI or other people. And then we're going to leave all of this exactly as it is and hit Next. And then this is going to create our folder structure and our basic Xcode project. Now we're going to leave Xcode up and running and come back to this in a little while. But what we're now going to do is jump over into Cursor. And this will then open up our new blank project that we've just created in Xcode in Cursor. Now at the moment it's defaulted to editor mode. This is the new Cursor 2.0 interface. I'll show editor mode off in a second, but I just want to give a quick differentiation between the agents tab and the editor tab. So it's quite nicely differentiated between how we go in and edit using the chat function and our code, which will appear in the middle, and then agents where we can run multiple agents. We can run agents together by switching them on and off and using multiple model mode. And we can also run them in sequence here to build out whatever we want. And when we actually apply our changes in agent mode, we will then see this in Xcode. And in Xcode, you can also preview that using either your iPhone on a real device, or you can do it in their simulator. So we're going to start off just in agent mode here. And specifically, we're actually going to double down and go to planning first. Now, previously, I would use ChatGPT for the planning phase of this and research it within ChatGPT, which I sometimes still do. But the plan mode in Cursor is now actually really good. So it will boot out a plan. You can review it. You can pull plans together. And then you can select your model that you actually want to plan with. And then it will give you an option to then turn that into build. And you start actually building that project behind the scenes. So in terms of planning, one kind of crucial thing here is I actually find that using something like Claude Opus or Claude Sonnet 4.5 or GPT-5 Codex actually gives you the best planning results. They tend to be more thinking models. They tend to do a little bit more search. They tend to actually plan things out in a very sequential, detailed way. If you use Sonnet 4.5 without thinking, or if you use Composer, which is Cursor's own model, which is very quick, then often the plan is a little bit superficial and doesn't lead to good results in the long term. Now, if you're just starting off here, I'd highly recommend jumping into ChatGPT first, so you're not using up any of your Cursor credits. And either on the free version of ChatGPT or on paid, if you're on the paid premium version, then I would go in and just have a conversation with ChatGPT thinking about what you want to build out. But just to show you this in practice, here's an example of a game that I've been thinking of putting together as a fun iOS app where you will compete against an AI or potentially a multiplayer mode against others, where you will write out a sentence or say a sentence, and then you stop and either the AI completes it or an opponent completes it, and then you need to complete their sentence as well. And what that does is it's just a fun, pretty vibey way to write a short story. You can make stuff up, you can be silly, you can switch on or off, not suitable for work mode. And it just constructs something a little bit creative to help people get a bit more creative in a gamified way, where creativity is probably on the downside with all of the AI stuff that's coming out recently. So that's what we're going to be building. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that right now. I've just gone back and forth in ChatGPT using voice just to plan out this game just on my phone. And I'm just going to paste this in from ChatGPT. So this is a little game called Finish My, where the user is going to type something out and then compete against an AI or a human player in a kind of creativity game of writing, a little bit like brain training. And this has actually mapped out a whole kind of marketing strategy. It's also mapped out the backend system and how it plugs into the actual Swift architecture here. And then what I normally do is I will plan that out just free flowing in ChatGPT, or I'll do it in Claude or sometimes in here as well. It doesn't really matter, using voice mode, depending on what I'm doing. And then I will switch on this plan mode, and I will tend to use Codex or I will use Opus for just planning this out. So I'm just going to hit send here. And this agent's then going to pop up in the in progress tab on the left navigation bar. And it's now going to spend a little bit of time just mapping this out. And then as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, we've now got this build button, which will become active when Codex has finished. So you can see it's become active now. And this has effectively pulled out all of that information and it's created this implementation plan. It's got create Superbase schema because I've asked it to create our backend in Superbase for a reason that I'll explain in a second. And it's kind of mapped out all of these things in detail, including things like Toolkit and Paywall. Now, as with anything to do with AI, a lot of this is in the prompt, and I've got quite a bit of experience working with development teams and AI coding myself. And so, although in this initial back and forth with ChatGPT, I'm kind of asking around things like how would I market it, do my competitor research, and then I'm giving our actual cursor agent context of that so it knows what to do and it's building out things like the UI and the database structure. Some of the key things for me, which are just going to save you a ton of time, I will always build out an MVP using a backend that's built in something pretty lightweight like Superbase. There are lots of other databases out there, but really this is what's going to do the heavy lifting. It's going to store any information you might need. We're going to be storing things like scores. If we want to do live multiplayer games, Superbase has also got a real-time function where it can, in real time, track who is in a room, who's joining, authentication, all this cool stuff. And if you're building out something which is more like an AI agent or a ChatGPT clone for a different industry, Superbase also has PG Vector, which is basically a vector database built into it. And I would recommend, if you're building a web app, which is outside the scope of this video, but I've got other videos on it, I would always use Next.js and either a Hetzner server or doing your MVP in Vercel. The reason for that is it's just so quick to build these things out, test them, and when you're planning, structure exactly what you're going to do both now for your MVP and in the future. Then our AI coding assistant is going to take care of that. So whenever I build anything out on the web, I'll specifically say, do not create things like Vercel edge functions. Keep all of these server-side in edge functions in Superbase in my database system so that I can transfer away from Vercel and when it gets very expensive onto something like a Hetzner server, which is a lot cheaper, but is a little bit less easy to do back and forth with when you're just starting to build stuff out. Now, that's just my kind of quick 101 guide to getting something up and running as quickly as possible. For iOS apps, you can look at loads of other things like Firebase, and there's loads of other iOS app-specific databases out there. I will stick with Superbase just because that's always worked really well for me and it's super easy. And then if I do want to build out a web app on top of this or link it into the front-end marketing page, then I can do that too. Now, that being said, that's my kind of key hack here, which is I would always specify and just do a little bit of work and research before you get to the point of actually building something out and planning it, thinking about where we're going to house our data, how it's going to be set up. And ChatGPT can help you out a lot with that as well. I'd also recommend asking ChatGPT or whatever model you're using as a kind of experimentation and research partner to think about the costs of all these things. So whether it's your API AI calls, whether it is any other services you might be using, whether it's the hosting costs, try and plan that up front so that then you know what your pricing model is going to be and you're not going to be out of pocket and you're creating something that is useful for people by structuring your marketing analysis as well. The other really important thing here, and I'm just going to jump over into the editor now. So when we jump over into the editor, it still keeps our agent in this side mode here. This is the little agent button that I can switch on or off. And as you can see on mine, in our main code window, I also have Claude Code built into my cursor IDE. I can hit this little Claude Code button, and then I'm actually going to be able to use Claude Code directly in cursor without eating into my cursor credits. Now, for me, I will tend to plan things out, and I'll do a lot of the MCP calls using the cursor agent interface. And it's particularly helpful if I want to compare models. So what we didn't do here when we were actually building this out is use our little model comparison tool. So when we jump into an agent, if I just click new agent here, what we can do is we could stack up, let's say, Codex thinking, let's say Sonnet thinking, And then we could switch on our multiple models, and we've got both of those active at the same time. And so what we could then do is we could say something like build out a UI schema and outline for my app, keeping it fun but minimalist, if I can spell properly. So as you'll see, if I just keep again this in sort of plan mode and I hit send here, then we're now going to get this really cool feature where it's actually running Sonnet 4.5 thinking and GPT-5 Codex thinking side by side. I can just switch onto either of these. And then what it's going to do is it's going to actually think about my request. And if we'd put in some connections to an MCP server, it's going to make those calls for us as well and plan things out. And then it's going to give us a side-by-side comparison of what each model is doing. Now, if we're actually in agent mode here and it's making changes to our code, the other really nice thing in Cursor with this is it's not at the same time both models going to start updating and messing with our code, doing different things. So as you can see here, we've got this work tree system that's popped up, which we'll need to configure. And I'll show you how to do that shortly. But basically what this means is it will make any changes into what is effectively a clone of our project, which is housed in some of the Cursor settings folders on your computer without actually updating the main project. So it will start doing stuff and it will split it between the Codex output and the Sonnet output without actually making any changes to our live code. And that's really important because when we actually then want to apply these changes, all we need to do is hit apply changes from the model output that we like. And that is what is going to affect our actual live code. So if you prefer the output from Sonnet, or you want to take the output from Sonnet and then paste it into GPT-5 Codex to combine the two and ask it what it might have missed and what else it might integrate based on the Sonnet summary, then it can do that. And I often do that to get a real complete understanding of what's happening. Now, in terms of the worktree setup, if I just click setup here, you'll see that we can then basically go into the Cursor configuration and map up our work tree. So if we were to run this, it would set it up. I've already got mine set up in general for my projects. And this will then let us build things out. The other really good tip here that a lot of people kind of sleep on is if I just go into the Cursor settings here, I always have a couple of these MCP tools linked up for all of my projects. So those are Superbase, because I use that all the time. I also use Apify's actors if I want to do any scraping. So this just means that any of the models that I use and agents can then go onto Apify's website and check out all of their agents and then select the best one for me. I've also got a link to Stripe, and I've also got a link to Heroku because some of the older projects I operate on use Heroku as a kind of deployment system. If you're building out a video project, I'd highly recommend checking out Remotion. That's a programmatic React-based video system which allows you to generate programmatically videos. That's great if you're creating anything with images, videos, rendering, beyond the reach of this project, but really important. And there are tons of other MCP servers that you can jump into by jumping into a website like Cursor Rules or something like that. And that, again, is something that will allow us to then find and add our own rules into our project. So this might be something around creating a Swift project. It might be the tone of voice. It might be not to generate hundreds of MD files when it's planning. Whatever it is, however you want to configure that, you can put that in, optimize things for you. So with that being said, we're just going to jump back over to our market analysis, and then I am going to hit build, and I'm going to do this locally. And we're going to see what GPT-5 Codex comes back with. So now our agent has finished. We're going to see exactly what it's built, and we're going to look at how we need to now interface with Superbase. So I'm just going to switch over into editor mode, having been in agent mode before. And in editor mode, we can see files in the center. We can also change our interface layout if we want to put the command line at the bottom, if we want to use the terminal. I'm just going to hide that for the moment. And we've got our agent system again on the right where we can select our models. And when I'm in here, I typically switch between Composer 1, which is Cursor's model, which is super fast, and then Sonnet 4.5 for most of the kind of daily tasks that don't require too much planning and thinking. So we can see here that we've now got a ton of files, which is now going to populate both our Xcode project, the folder that we built out right at the start. And the agent system has done all of this without me needing to do anything. I actually went off and grabbed a coffee while this was all working. and we did some of our Superbase, just very basic setup. So the folder that I just want to show you predominantly here is Superbase, because we're going to need to do a couple of manual things here just to show you how to do this. We can also run the Superbase MCP and have our edge functions and database and tables populated, but I just want to show you that as a little extra thing here, so you've got a bit of an understanding on how to do that and how it works. The other important files that have been created here that are worth just noting, we've got our git ignore file and we've got our config.xcconfig file. Now, this config file is a Swift project file, and this is basically a little bit like the environment variables file that I mentioned earlier for Next.js web-based projects. This is where a lot of the configuration information goes into. And our git ignore is also where some of our environment variables sit in this project. So again, this is something that the AI will not automatically scrape. It's not going to be insecure. And we're going to keep the majority of our API keys and anything that is secure on Superbase in the cloud on a serverless function to make sure there's minimal security issues with that. So that being said, it has also created this Superbase project file outside of all of the Swift and Xcode files that we will see propagated in Xcode in a second. So these are our edge functions. They're all .ts files. So we've got generate cover, we've got score story, we've got update, XP, and level, and we've got complete story at the top here. So if I click on any of these, they sort of appear in the middle. And what I'm just going to do now is quickly show you how to deploy these. So if we just select basically all this text, it's not hugely long, and we're just going to copy this. And then I'm just going to jump over into Superbase, into the edge functions bit, and I'm going to click on deploy with the editor here. And this basically just gives you a little static template index.ts file that I'm just going to paste over here. And I'm then just going to make sure I'm calling this the right thing. So this one is complete_story. So it matches up with what we've got. I'm going to jump back over here and I'm going to type in complete_story, and then I'm going to deploy that edge function. And then I just want to show you this because if we have any problems, if we're debugging anything with regards to OpenAI calls or anything that's being run by these edge functions, or anything's not working when we load up our Xcode project and we're getting Superbase errors, then we're going to come here to our functions tab and we're going to click on our logs. And then this is going to output all of the logs, and it's going to help us to find any bugs or problems, which then we can copy and paste back into Cursor if we need it. So I'm going to do this for each one of these, and then we're going to hop over into Xcode. So we are now going to jump over into Xcode to see what this project looks like. So if I just jump over into Xcode, you'll see that all of the files created by Cursor in our original Finish My project folder we created right at the beginning have now all been populated. We've also got some key dependencies like the Superbase dependency that was created as well via our agent. And on the right-hand side of the screen, I've got canvas mode activated within Xcode, which is one of the nice things with Swift, which is you can preview your app as it's being built. Now, when I do this, I typically have a quick look at some of the UI and the UX and a quick play around using the canvas, and then I will actually output onto my iPhone to test on device to make sure that it's functioning on a real Apple phone. As you can see here, for an MVP that we've created in literally about 45 minutes from that original prompt using Cursor, this is not terrible. The UI needs quite a lot of work. So we've got the core functionality built into this. So we've got our level progression system, we've got solo and multiplayer. We've also got some things like daily challenges. And if I just jump into the solo mode here, we've also got language selection. So we could potentially turn this into a language learning tool. We can set the number of rounds. We can choose our opponent here from some of the AIs that we have built out, depending on what we want to do. And if I hit begin here, it's got a nice little animation, and then it's going to load up the game for us. And then over on the game side, we can either use chat mode or the story mode here. And then I could start off the story by saying something like, a man eats an apple in a space station. And then I can hit finish my, which is that button. And then what will happen is the AI will then come back and writes down the next bit. And then it goes back to being my two modes here. We've got story mode and we've got chat mode. And then what I can do here is a couple of things. So I can actually look at some of our error logs at the bottom here. I can look over and see if we've got any warnings or anything like that. So there's a bunch of warnings that we got that might need updating around the different actors and the different services we've added in. And with Cursor, what I can then basically do here is I can just copy these. I can jump back over into Cursor. I can paste these in here. And even without typing anything, if I just press enter, it's then going to analyze this error from Swift, from Xcode, and it's going to fix this for us in real time. And it's going to update Xcode in real time as well. The other really cool thing that we can do here now that we've got this functioning and actually getting your app working and not having an error or actually being able to boot up and load is probably, I would say, like 80% of the struggle here. So now we've actually got this functioning. This is where we can now jump in and we can start tweaking things. So let's say we want to add in our own logo. We want to change up some of the UI here. We want to go and generate with Nano Banana an example kind of app mockup and completely change this. Then we can do that and we can then upload some of those UI elements into Cursor using our image upload and get that to be updated in real time. So it's much easier updating the UI and optimizing that based on user feedback than it is getting in a lot of the core functionality. So that's a really quick run through how I use Cursor to build iOS apps super quickly. Bunch of stuff that you can do with this. You can research current apps that are taking off. You can look at gaps in the market. You can look at niches. You can build out apps that are useful for yourself or the industry that you work in to solve problems, and then get these up and out really quickly. And then it's all about marketing and how we actually market this to an audience. And that's something that we're going to be covering in future walkthroughs where we look at how we can use platforms like TikTok and LinkedIn to create AI-powered content with either UGC or slideshow-based content to really grab attention for our app, both while we're building it and when it's been deployed and available on the App Store, and drive people into the app and get them downloading it and get them converting through that paywall. So I hope you guys like this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you've got any other things that you do with Cursor or any other questions around this, and I'll catch you again in the next video. See ya.